guys, this is Natasha, aka Natty Willie, and welcome to another episode of TV Talk with Natasha and Kim. Say hello, Kim.
Hi, everybody.
So we will be reviewing for you episode 4 of Grimm, and it's called One Night Stand. And Kim will be reviewing, and then we'll talk about what we liked and didn't like about the episode. So take it away, Kim.
Okay, guys, so this episode was pretty cool. It starts off with, I like to call him Mike from Twilight, because it's a kid who played Mike in Twilight, and I think his name was like Jake in the movie, but if I call him Mike, that's why. So it's Jake and another boy and 2 other girls. I think the other boy's name was Dan, and 2 girls, and they're on a lake, and they're talking and whatnot, and then you see a 5th girl kind of hiding in the bushes, and we find out her name is Ellie, and she's deaf. And her sister sees her and goes over there and says, "Stop spying," and the Ellie is kind of sign languaging, you know, "Not him, I love him," and she's saying, "You'll never be anything like them," and she's and "I'm going to tell Dad that you're here," and she's like, "Don't tell Dad." And she's like, and then the sister's like, "You need to go home." And the sister leaves and goes back to Jake. Meanwhile, Ellie doesn't go home. She continues hanging around, and her sister and Jake and Daniel and the other girl get into the lake, and all of a sudden, Daniel's pulled down underneath the water by some sort of creature. You just see the hand, kind of scaly. And then Jake is pulled down. And he gets free somehow, and you see him wash up on the shore, and Ellie is the one that saves him. And her eyes are all glowy. They're really pretty, actually. Her eyes are like glowing like a crystal blue type of thing, and she's got gills. And Jake's kind of out at it, and he's like, "Oh, you know, what happened?" And that is basically the opening scene. Well, Daniel, unfortunately, dies, and of course, Nick and Hank get the case. Nick and Hank are kind of following up. They get the call. They go talk to Jake. Jake's like, "Did you find Daniel? Did you find Daniel?" And they're like, "He's dead. Sorry, bro." And he's like, "Let's go down to the scene, and you can tell me what happened and whatnot." And Jake tries to explain what happened. He sounds a little crazy because he's kind of fuzzy about the details and whatnot. And while they're down there looking at the scene, Nick, with his super hearing, because I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was last season, he gets blinded for a while, and so his sense of hearing increases. So he hears Ellie spying in the bushes again, and he starts to chase after her. And she runs and jumps into the lake and swims about 500 feet in 2 seconds. So Nick is like, "Wow, that's not normal." She obviously is something. Meanwhile, Ellie has stolen Jake's phone. You'll need that information later on, so I'm just bringing that up now. All right, cut to Monroe and Rosalie. They move in together. They're moving in together. You see them do cute little things like, "I'm just trying to figure out where all your stuff should go," and whatnot. And that's basically what they're doing the whole movie. Cut to Captain Renard. He gets a text from his henchman in Vienna with a picture of Adeline staying at the hotel that Frau had in her little notebook from the last episode. And so Renard's like, "I guess they're working together," and then he's like, "Maybe she's the one that's pregnant and trying to sell the baby." And I thought he knew she was pregnant, but apparently he didn't, and he just figured it out. But we're going to talk about that later, Natasha, okay?
Yeah.
Because I want some more clarification on that. So, cut back to the girls, the deaf girl who was taking the cell phone, which, you know, cell phones can be tracked, so, of course, Wu, in his infinite wisdom, tracks the cell phone, and Nick and Hank go marching down to where the cell phone is, and is faced with the 3 girls' father, and says, "We tracked the cell phone here, blah, blah, blah." They call it, it rings, that's probable cause. They go in there, they find the cell phone, they come out, and the father's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. My girls are good girls. They didn't do anything." And all of a sudden, these 2 thuggish guys come out of a car. "Is there a problem here?" And Hank are like, "No." And we was like, "You need to stay back." I like Woo. It's like, you need to stay back. So the two girls come back, and Nick is like, we're taking you in. Jake is actually there because he took them with. Nick took him with them to the scene to see if he could identify anybody, and he identified the two girls that he was with on the beach. So they take them back to the precinct, and so they take them back. Meanwhile, the father is attacked by the two thugs, and the thugs say basically, if you knew how to raise your women right, this wouldn't happen. And that made me want to slap him. I'm sorry, Nick found out they were naiads. I think they're called naiads. Because he went to Rosalie and Monroe for help, and Rosalie had mentioned that, and so he went to his trailer and looked at the books and found naiads. And so he kind of knows what they are, and you see these other two guys, which I guess are like the kind of old school traditional naiads, and it seems like the father doesn't want to have anything to do with their traditions, and so it's kind of a power play there, which is kind of interesting. So they're down at the precinct. The father comes in, storming in, and says, I killed that boy. Let my girls go. You know, doing the protective fatherly thing, and they're like, Nick is like, you're lying. What about this? What about that? What about this? What did the guy look like? How tall was he? You could totally tell that Dad was lying. But Nick decides to take that information and tell the girls and see if he can get what really happened out of them by saying that. Now he goes in there, and their skin's all peeling because they're not supposed to be out of the water for any length of time, so they're literally dying. And he tells them that your father just confessed, so we're letting you go, and she and the one, and I don't remember what her name is, I'm sorry, but she has blonde hair. The blonde-haired girl is like, it's our father. We need to tell them the truth. And she... Sarah? Is it Sarah?
Yeah.
Sarah, okay. And she basically tells them about the two old-school thuggish naiads that hit her father and how it was their fault, and coming to find out they're just bitter because they're born sterile, and the only way that naiad women can reproduce and save the race is other people, a lot of humans, and then these naiad men are having to raise children that aren't theirs, and they're just bitter about it. So they decided, hey, we'll kill a guy. I really don't know the reason behind it, but that was what happened. And meanwhile, while they're doing this interrogation, and Nick's finding all this good information out, Ellie, who just can't get enough of Jake, sneaks into his apartment. He's like, oh, you're the girl that saved me, and she's trying to read his lips and whatnot, and then she says she wants to show him something. Well, doesn't say it, but kind of pulls him. Goes down to the pool, jumps in the pool, and swims around in like 2 seconds, just does a bunch of laps, then comes out, and her eyes are all crystal blue and gills, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's kind of cool. And then he gets hit over the head by the two thuggish guys, like twice with a pipe. My gosh. And so the thuggish guys take Ellie, grab her, and take her back because they're trying to teach her a lesson. They say they're going to cut her, and we find out what that is later. So when Jake comes to, he calls Nick and says, they just jumped me and hit me over the head, and they took Ellie. And so Nick is in the middle of getting the full story from the two other girls, and he says, stay right there, I'll send police. So Nick and Hank go down to the docks and go to save Ellie, and they're trying to cut her webbing. It's like they cut her webbing so she can't swim or something. I don't really know. They didn't really explain it, but it is kind of a tradition. If somebody, kind of breaks the rules, that's what they do as humiliation. So Nick and Hank get there just in time, of course. They're fighting the two thugs. Nick jumps in to save the girl because she's dumped into the lake with an anchor attached to her, and he jumps in there to save her. And while he's in there and he takes the rope off of her to bring her up, he, goes into his dead state. You can't really tell because you can't tell him that he's underwater, so you can't tell that he's turning pale. But, what they did with the music and kind of the slow motion, you suspect. And then he pulls her out, and, Hank has locked up the other two guys, and he runs over to her and just to make sure he's okay. And he looks up at Nick and he's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, why?" And then all of a sudden you see his color come back. So he obviously did go into that dead state, which we don't know any more about. That should be interesting. And the father's there, and the other two sisters are like, "Ah, you saved the day, thank you, blah, blah, blah." This whole time, Monroe and Rosalie are still basically unpacking. I mean, that's all they did the whole movie. And Rosalie's like, "Oh, don't try too hard and don't act scared. This is a good thing, yada, yada, yada." At the very end, Juliet checks Nick's email because he tells her to, because he hasn't gotten the results of the doctor's results from all of his tests. And so she reads the results and says, "Your metabolism is like acting half as fast as it should," which sucks for Nick, but otherwise you're pretty healthy. And then she sees another email saying, "The royal assassination, it's not safe for me to stay anymore. I have to leave soon. Love you. I love you, M." And she's like, "Who is this M?" Obviously, it's Nick's mother. But she doesn't know that, and so she's like, "Who is this woman saying I love you and signing M?" And that's where it, fades to black, and that's the end of the episode. So that's a recap. Natasha, we can start off with you about what you liked, what you didn't like, since I just talked a bunch.
Okay, seriously, in this day and age, there's STDs, there's unwanted pregnancies, and these guys happen to be upon these chicks, and they wind up having sex with them unprotected. It's inexcusable.
Don't do it, kids. And
Yeah.
one of them died because of it, so let that be a lesson to you, all those teenagers out there.
I mean, really. Back in the day, there was a reason why the parents told you to be weary of them fast girls. I'm just saying. And it was funny because I was like, well, this is reverse fishing because, the girls kind of lured them into the water, and then the fish that actually want to, kill them or whatever, tries to kill them. Kind of like what humans do. They lure with the worm, then they catch the fish, and then they reel them in, and then eat them and do whatever. So I thought that was reverse fishing. I thought that was pretty cool. And I did like how Renard was like, round up the unusual suspects.
Yeah, that was a good line.
That was pretty funny. And he didn't even, give the naiads any slack. Because I'm like, this is a case, they're involved. If they happen to die, oh well, they shouldn't have been involved. So I kind of understood where he was coming from with that. But I found it kind of ironic since he's trying to get away with a lot of stuff. And he's the captain and he's a Wesson, but yeah.
Yeah, I found it kind of harsh too because I think they're teenagers. Like, I think they're minors.
And Ellie is a stalker. And she stole the man's phone. I'm like, are you homeschooled? Not to be against homeschooled. Not to. I don't want to offend anyone that's been homeschooled. But I'm just, has she been at school or had some kind of education where she would know that maybe taking a phone is not a good idea? It just didn't make sense to me.
Maybe they're not technologically advanced because they spend most of their time in the water. I don't know.
I wanted to smack them guys as well just because I'm like, well, if y'all were gung-ho on doing this, that, and the other, maybe y'all should have stayed in Alaska.
This is the new wave. No time for those old traditions.
Not time for that mess. And another reason to go not do unprotected sex, well, the girls were trying to get pregnant.
That's true, and Jake would be a daddy. So, I mean, I think I wish they would have done a little bit more with Rosalie and Monroe, because they weren't really in it that much. I mean, I know they're moving in together, but they could have developed that story plot a little bit more.
All they needed to really go further with. She's moving in. They're in the process of moving in. Monroe still had a little bit of insecurity, which was understandable. I mean, this is probably the furthest... I don't even think he went this far with his ex-girlfriend from back in season 1. I don't even think they moved in together.
Yeah, and he did mention that there had been other girls, but nothing solid and steady as this relationship. So it was kind of cute, especially where he's trying to put, I thought it was cute. He tried to put that ugly, what was like a chia pet on top of his mantle. And she's like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? That doesn't look cute. So, and this whole storyline with Nick being going in a dead state, that's very interesting, and I want to know more about that. I think they're progressing with that. rather well because they're just giving you little tidbits and stuff and so it keeps you interested.
Well, I mean, he keeps on being in denial when Juliet has told him multiple times, you look like you're dead. And even Hank said something this episode saying, you look like you were dead. And the fact that he lasted in the water so long because he was able to slow his heart rate. And I'm thinking in Portland, the water's a lot colder than maybe down here in the South. So, I mean, you got to take that into account, too.
I wonder if he's, like, losing time and he doesn't even realize what's happening during that time. Like, he doesn't realize that there's a pause there. Yeah. They haven't explained it yet, so I'm still waiting on that. But
I think you should at least not ignore what they're saying either.
That's true. And he did go to the doctor, but I'm sure his mom's going to bring clarity. So let's talk about that for a second. When's the last time we've seen his mother?
Since the beginning of season 2. Unfortunately, Nick has not really had a chance to talk to Juliet about any of that part of it, just because, 1, she was in a coma, and B, she forgot about him. She just got her memory back, and now she's just been introduced to this Wesson world. So, yeah, there hasn't really been that much time to really discuss. Oh, yeah, by the way, my mom's alive.
I really hope Juliet just asks him about it. I hope she doesn't go into this whole thing where she's holding a grudge and is mad about it and tries to find out more about this person with just talk to him. Just say, I saw this email. Can you tell me what it's about, please? That's what a relationship should be like. You should be talking to each other. I mean, the man told you he's a Grimm, and he sees us, and you can be honest and say, I saw an email.
Yeah, well, again, and Nick hasn't really had an issue with being faithful, so I hope she doesn't, immediately start, like you said, investigating, but she does ask him about it, and if he was really trying to hide something, he wouldn't have told her to, just check his email.
Yeah, definitely. And so what's up with Captain... I thought Captain Radar knew that Adeline was pregnant. I must have missed something. I need to go back and watch the other episodes.
I thought he knew, too, but maybe he didn't, or maybe she really didn't get a chance to tell him, because they haven't really been communicating at all lately. I mean, they had their little one-night rendezvous, and that was about it. She left town and bounced.
And we'll see what he does and how he acts on that information.
And they showed the funeral, and I'm like, when is the brother going to pop up? I'm really wanting to know at this point.
We're all going to be waiting for the end.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I'm just like, can't you just drop it a little bit?
Well, just to let you guys know, we're going to be waiting for it for at least another 2 seasons. I mean, we're just going to assume that he's going to pop back, and I am not giving up until season 5. Season 5, I might give up, so...
Oh, so you're waiting more than one season? You're not going to wait till the end of the season?
No, because he's not a main character, and that actor is... I mean, he has other jobs.
He's in demand. He's in demand.
Pretty young actor, so they are leaving it open in case... They could be leaving it open because he got another job, and he has to go work for the next 3 months on something else.
Yeah.
And they could always bring him back. So I will give it till season 5 for them to say something. Yeah. And then after season 5, I'll give up.
Well, for Adeline, I think from now on we should just mention if she's in the episode or not until she gets her powers back, just because right now she's just, I don't care. I don't care.
Natty Willie is bitter because it has been several episodes and she doesn't have her powers back, and she went through all that mess that they put her through, the gypsies did, and she still doesn't have her powers back. So we're just talking about Adeline until Grimm gets it.
We're not going to talk about it. We'll just say, oh, she's in the episode, and that's it.
All right. Well, that is our recap of the latest episode of Grimm. You guys, if you have any comments or want us to bring something up, go ahead and give us a shout out or comment down below in the comments area. And to reach us, you can reach me at anime23, ANIME23, or at the Nerd Element. And Natasha?
At Willcat12, WILLCAT12.
Okay, guys, so we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.